review because it was like legit.
Yeah. And I think that's why I wanted to bring it to the forefront early.
Good comparison, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So, hey, everybody, by the way, this is the pre and after show, the pre-after show. So we've already done this review. We're coming off the heels of it, but we're going to be using this as sort of a teaser and sort of our weekly podcast, which it will become a podcast soon, but our weekly broadcast ahead of our Miami Vice airing. So look for that on Friday. We will be releasing that Friday evening UK time, 5 p.m.-ish, maybe 6. I'll confirm time, but it'll be Friday evening. And this is being aired right now for Wednesday. So, yeah, it was I thought it was an interesting one to do because it was a bit of a departure from what we had been doing.
I would say, yeah, definitely. I'm not going to give away too much here, but it was different to what we've covered so far, but in largely a good way.
So your partner very much keen to get your opinion on the show then?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I say, it was a mainstay in their family household. So I think she'd be quite intrigued to see what I thought of it. And I'll have a good chat with her after.
Yeah, it may be worth watching some episodes. That I haven't seen that one. It was Evan is the name of that one, which I couldn't get a hold of. But definitely worth watching. So anyway, how was your week, by the way?
Yeah, I had a really good week actually, mate. How was yours? You had a good one?
Yeah, it's been very busy. So my work, and I think I've mentioned this before, keeps me busy because I work with schools. So very generically, I work with schools, and with COVID, everything's going a bit crazy right now. But we managed to get away to a resort, just a little local British resort, and it was a lovely weekend. It's just trying to dodge everything COVID related right now.
Yeah, we had a little chat, didn't we, off off air, and you were saying that you had some thoughts that you wanted to share about your COVID experience, but your experience of people dealing with COVID, right?
Yeah, so this has been interesting because this has been an ongoing battle for us with COVID, same as everybody else. I want to stress these are first world problems. So what I'm about to whine about, I'm actually very lucky because I've not had to be furloughed, seconded, fired, let go. I maintained my job and actually nothing changed for me.
For my wife, is fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually for my wife, so this is why I want to preface this. Her work situation got better because she was traveling a long way to work. Her employers did not believe in remote working. Just didn't buy into it. Very old school. And she was sort of saying, look, my husband does it and it works. It's fine because I work from home. So this is my home office. This seat's where I sit every day. And because of COVID, they had to test it. And sure enough, they loved it. And my wife is very good at what she does. And they've pretty much said, yeah, you may need to come in 1 day a week just so we have somebody in the office. But they've moved to hot desks. So it's been I'm going to complain about not going on vacation. So that's I just want to throw that out there. But our lives have actually gotten better because of COVID in some respect. Doesn't mean it's not annoying and we don't, want to, we want to see it go away. It's killing people. It's hurting people. It's economically, it's killing everything. But we went to a golf resort. I won't say much more about golf because I talk about golf a bit too much. But we went to a golf resort, and in the evenings, we would go to dinner, and it was all it was in Wales, and they were all very strict. Wear masks, which I'm a big advocate of wearing masks. That's what doctors say. And you wear your mask to the table. They take you to the table. You sit down at dinner, mask off. You enjoy your meal. They separated the tables out nicely. But when you go through to the bar, there's a restaurant. And in that restaurant, there was a lot of golf societies there. So for those of you that don't golf, for those of you that have no idea what a golf society is, it's just a group of guys that don't want to join a golf club or join a golf club and want to go traveling together and play golf. And they were in the bar. Now, what was annoying me was part of the problem with the spread is, people just not paying attention to the virus or caring about the virus spreading or caring about them getting the virus, not thinking about what the connotation of that is, not just for health, but for us moving on as in the United Kingdom or in the United States. And they were like 10 deep, shoulder to shoulder, watching football, literally shoulder to shoulder on these bench seats. And it was packed. So Nick and I just sort of slid in and slid out. You had to go through the bar area. And I found this profoundly annoying because there's a good chance I've now had to rebook 4 holidays this year because of COVID. I don't mind. But these guys, there's a very good chance that they had to rebook their Portugal holiday for Wales because it was canceled. And that would have been annoying to them.
Yeah.
And what do? Their next move is they go to Wales and they act like the problems that stop them from traveling to Portugal don't exist anymore. And we're just going to sit elbow to elbow. Same thing that happened in Cheltenham with Cheltenham races back in March. People were just like, we better go and enjoy this before this awful thing happens that changes our lives. And then they go and they make things worse for the thing that annoys them the most. So this really annoyed me, and it really made me think about how this government, I'm going on a bit of a thing. I just wanted to vent a bit.
You go, vent away.
I would love to see this government here in the UK just stop being nice and diplomatic and just say, look, things are going to be shit if you keep bumping into people, sitting shoulder to shoulder with people, not paying attention to social distancing, not separating yourselves from crowds. If you don't like the measures, if you want to travel on holiday, if you want to go to concerts, just stay away from people as best you can, or we're going to make it worse for you. It just drives me bonkers. People just don't pay attention to the fact that they hate the rules, they hate the restrictions, yet they go out every chance they get and they put themselves in a position to be restricted. That's all I'm going to say on that. Calm now.
Well, okay, and breathe. So I think your point is, I'd say it's a very strong point overall. I don't think there's huge amounts of cases to argue it. What I would say as the devil's advocate is that they could have been tested prior to going without you knowing. They may have all been cleared, and they're tested. They're in each other's bubble. They could be a group of like 3 sets of brothers or something, and they're all in bubbles, and they're like, we're not ill, we're all good, we've not got temperatures, we've been tested, we're good to go. Again, I might be clutching at straws with that, but there is the possibility that they have all been cleared and they're all good to go. The other side I would say to it, which, because if I'm being honest, if I'm taking a punt at that, I'd say they probably aren't, and it's more the point that I'm going to make now. You'll still see overweight people slamming in fast food. You'll still see people that have, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of another example, people doing things that they shouldn't be doing and they're still doing them. Like people that are addicted to drugs and they're taking drugs, alcoholics with cans in their hand. It is infuriating and it's annoying. And I think the defense on this side is that, it's something that the whole country, the whole world can relate to, is this COVID and dealing with it. And I don't think there's anyone really having a great time of it, because there are certain levels of restrictions for everyone, even the rich, the elite people. And that this opportunity, much like yours and Nick's, is a way to kind of relive life without COVID. Like, go back to a point where actually, like, escape from COVID. Now, your point is spot on. Like, you can't argue with the fact that they're potentially increasing the risk of keeping it there. That's that, they're actually working against what they might be frustrated from. But it's just like everyone, all of the, overweight people having McDonald's and all of the, it's the same thing. It's like they can't help themselves. Like, life is stressful and tough, and actually probably just wanted to, fuck it, let's just watch the football with the boys together like we used to, and enjoy ourselves for however many days or the night or whenever they're doing that. So I'm not jumping to the defense of saying like, you don't want to be encouraging people doing that, but I understand it. Like, I get it.
I think when I look at that situation, and I think that's a fair point, and I do look at it in the lens that I don't believe they've been tested. Well, listening to the conversations in passing and listening to them outside of my hotel room at 1 a.m., it's, this is not an evolved group of individuals hanging out and playing golf. But the other thing, maybe I don't take that into account, is I have a colleague who has symptoms and he was not able to get a test this week. He's been chasing up for a test for the last 3 or 4 days. He's not been able to get a test. So I don't necessarily think that's the issue, but I think it's a fair point to make that, this getting together, I think we've learned more than in any other time how important people are to people. As annoying as people are to people, people also depend on physical, emotional contact. When I say physical contact, I don't mean bumping uglies, but I mean just like being with somebody. But I think for me, it's almost, if I were to use that same metaphor, it's that fat guy is slamming in 8 pizzas in one sitting. It's not just he's having that cheating McDonald's, because me and my friends get together and we decided to not, we decided we were forced to look at a different holiday, but we made sure that we kept our group to a very small number. There was other people in our friend group that said, "Oh, you're going to the UK. We can tag along now." We didn't want to fly out there. And we said, "No, we're going to keep it to a small group because, it's a bit hypocritical." Now, granted, this is all my opinion and this is how I'm feeling on it. I just feel like it was extreme to see that many people crammed together and not one person said, "You know what? This could be a problem." There's signs everywhere in the hotel. It's so inconvenient whenever you travel abroad. And it bothers me. And maybe I'm not giving people, and I'm normally the patient one when it comes to behavior, when it comes to people doing things that are wrong. So this is a bit of a departure for me, you'll probably think.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
I think it just winds me up, because it's not like we're sacrificing much to say, go on your golf holiday, go to the bar, but just don't sit elbow to elbow, 10 people deep, in a bar, where the staff are having to wear masks. I don't know. I think that's that step too far for me.
Yeah, and I think that when you're making the effort yourself, for whatever means that is, and you're seeing someone not give a shit, it's just difficult. When you're, well, I wish I didn't give a shit either. I wish we had 10, 12, 20 people with us, but we made the choice not to do that because we're being mindful of you guys and everyone else out there and ourselves. And yeah, it's frustrating when you're doing your bit and, like a classic, I mean, it's a little bit different, but where me and Lou live, we go out for walks up and down the road, and we live on quite a long road. It's over a mile long, and it's a dead end at the end of it. And it's a bit of a hot spot for a lot of people, right at the end of the road, and people walk up and down it. And it's a single track road through most of it. And we've got to walk up and down it to go on our usual walks. And when we do, we find litter everywhere. We find coffee cups, mugs, cans, bottles. You're like, what knobheads are chucking this out? There are bins down the bottom. There are bins in town. Like, do people still like drop the window down and chuck a plastic bottle out? Yeah, they do. Like every day as well. Every day. So when we walk up and down, we take a bag with us and we kind of pop it in. But
yeah,
when you sit and there are times when you're walking up and down and you're like, exactly what I'm just saying. Like, who's doing it? People still do it. They didn't give a shit. Like, why can't we show people here and catching them and like finding them heavily for this? Like, well, I'm just going to tidy up your shit, shall I? And actually, the answer is that we just do what we can. Like, we take bags with us, we pop it in a bag, we bring it back, and we recycle it. And it's not a massive deal from our end, but we'd prefer to do what we can do, focus on what we can control, be the change that we want to see in the world. And then we're hoping, and people we've seen and commented on us doing it. My parents came down and saw us do it, and they were helping out, that type of thing. So yeah, it's so I'm empathizing with you, mate. I know what you're on. I'm on your side. Like I'm just like, from the viewer's perspective, trying to give an alternative, and I can understand at the same time people maybe doing that rather than the litter side of it. My example, which makes zero sense at all, but like, it is frustrating because everyone's kind of finding it tough. And if we all just did a better job, we'd be out of this sooner and we could just get on with our lives.
Just to kind of talk about the extremes of my views here. And I think a lot of this is probably me getting a bit emotive about it because it stopped me from seeing my family for the last year. It'll be 18 months before I physically see my family living in the United Kingdom. But just to point out how I'm not being hypocritical, to my values, but I'm the kind of person, and this winds up my wife, that if there's a news story that said, teenager kills entire family, and, I will potentially be, okay, well, maybe we need to find out what happened in this guy's life to cause him to kill people. Maybe maybe he was beaten or something like that. That's an extreme example, but that's the kind of behavior you've probably known out of me.
I've seen that.
Let's see. And in this instance, I'm like, screw them. All right. They're a bunch of jackasses. I'm wearing this mask walking by them. I would love to just sit down and have some beers with them. I'm going back up to my room and going to bed at 10 o'clock because so I think probably I've taken that a bit personally, but it felt good to at least get that off my chest.
look, I've got a point here, and I want to take it on because I think this kind of there draws some similarities in this. Okay, so one of the things I want to bring up is that you may or may not know or follow Tim Ferriss. Do you follow Tim's work?
Tim Ferriss, that name is familiar. Tim Ferriss,
the 4-hour work week, and then he did the 4-hour body and the 4-hour chef. He's an author. He's released more books. I'm
going to look him up.
You know, mentors.
Can I share the first thing that came to my mind? I'm just going to bring him on the screen here. My quick search. Yeah. So, have you ever seen? And this is not related, and I'm not belittling the point, but have you ever seen the film "There's Something About Mary"?
Yes.
And there's that scene where he meets the crazy serial killer, and like he was going to come out with 6-minute abs because there was 7-minute abs already out there.
Oh God, mate, I don't know who that is though.
It just
can you Google that guy? You think it looks like him?
No, it doesn't look like him. It's just that whole bit of dialogue where he's like, well, I got a business idea, and he's like, what's your business idea? It's 7-minute abs. Well, isn't there 8-minute abs? He's like, yeah, but it's better because it's 7-minute abs. And I just, as soon as you were describing that, I was thinking he picked the 4-hour number, and I'm like, you know what? You should come out with the 3-hour work week, mate, and you could trump him on that.
So Tim Ferriss will be the first to admit he hates the title, the 4-hour work week, and he had some other ideas to do it. Went with it, and he's half regretted. He's like, I can't regret it because it's made me where I am. But he doesn't like that branding. And then went on because he's done a lot of, he's like a kind of biohacker, does his own experiments and stuff like that. And he's a ridiculous level researcher. So he brought out the 4-hour body using the branding from the 4-hour work week because it was a big bestseller. And that did well. And did the 4-hour chef, which it's basically about trying to condense all the best, like the top level stuff into kind of bite-sized actionable chunks. So I love his stuff personally, and he's got a podcast, very successful podcast. Actually, he's been running it for a long time now, and he interviewed, he's interviewed the elites, similar to Rogan. He's got a very different style to Rogan, but I like them. I really like both of them for separate reasons. Tim brought out 2 different books, Tribe of Mentors and Tools of Titans. One of them, I believe it's the Tools of Titans, which was the book after the 4-hour body, was a condensed version. He went through, basically imagine Rogan going through all of his podcast guests and getting them to kind of get the best key learnings out of everyone and release a book on it. That is what Tribal Mentors is. So this guy, this is the age we live in, mate. Like, this guy has interviewed all of these amazing people, which we can listen to. Not only that, he has condensed it and formulated it and put it in a book for us to kind of take away these key learnings from all these top level performers across. I think he split it into it was body section to start with, mind, and then money. So I love all 3 of those things. So it was great. And then his last one, the Tribe of Mentors, is about people he hasn't had on the podcast. He had something like 12 questions, sent them out to absolutely every contact list he could get, like the best of the best. And he picked out the best answers from everyone. He didn't repeat people that said the same thing. He tried to kind of get the best answers from the people and spread them across the book. So what I'm, I suppose, saying is I'm a big Tim Ferriss fan, have been for a while. That 4-hour work week really changed my life with regards to trying to find, in his book, he calls it the muse. So like a passive income for you to leave your job. And I found publishing and I left my job. So really, if I were being interviewed by someone, I'd have to give credit to Tim Ferriss for kind of helping me shape my life to some degree. Okay. This isn't really my point. I'm just, I suppose, giving a bit of background and like waffling a little bit. But so my point was that I got an email from him. I'm on his email list on, I think, believe it was Friday of last week or something, saying I'm about to release a episode that I'm shit scared of releasing. It's the most powerful episode I've ever done. I've been straining over whether or not to release it or not, and I've decided I'm going to do it. And tuning for the next few days, I was like, okay, because Tim is a very open guy. He'll admit his flaws very readily, so he's not someone that's that sheepish. So I thought, okay, wonder what this is about. And he did a unbelievable podcast on him being sexually assaulted from the ages of 2 and 4.
Wow.
And he had someone on there, a lady who had been, forgive me, I can't remember her name. I hadn't heard her before, but she was fantastic. And she was on Tim's show, and Tim was kind of digging around saying, you kind of don't talk much about your childhood and what about your background? Kind of digging away. And she just thought, fucking hell, do I say this or not? And on air, for the first time publicly, she basically admitted she'd been abused. And she'd been abused from something like 9 till 12 from her stepdad. He left. Mum got with someone else. And then the new stepdad abused her as well. Like, horrendous situation. She's been messed up most of her life. And admitting that to Tim and then having a talk, he then eventually opened up to her. And they ended up doing this podcast together to talk about their experience. And so, one, I just want to put it out there for those people that that's a difficult one. Say you're interested in this stuff. It was fascinating seeing someone open up about what they went through. It was a very raw, interesting podcast for one. So this is the way I think, Shawn. It's my weirdness, but I also think it's quite a cool trait of mine as well. I watched that in case I encounter anyone that has gone through that, and I can be better equipped to deal with it. And I picked up some really useful kind of tips on handling that. And for example, Tim gave what things he's done to kind of get over it, what things he regrets, what things he do differently. Has he confronted the guy, etc., etc. Like, when do you tell your parents? Because it was through babysitting. The babysitter did it.
Oh, wow.
So do you tell the parents and not? And yeah, it was just, there's all these different, like, fascinating kind of things to talk about. And me and Lou were talking about the episode, much like I'm doing now. And I was just saying, like, at some point, how do you treat like a serial abuser like that? Because this lady who'd been abused twice from two separate males, stepfathers in that position, she had therapy. She wanted to die, but she wasn't brave enough to take her life. But she didn't want to be alive. She was having therapy 5 days a week, and basically the cost of that is immense. And she was basically putting most of her resources to cover that. And her defense of that was, if I didn't do that, I'd kill myself. So there would be no point in living anyway. So I need this is the most important thing in my life. So I have to give everything to it to keep going. She's now 58 and she's now having therapy twice a week. But there was a point where she went from 5 down to 3 and etc. But she's still having therapy, and she's a 58-year-old woman. And you think, like, the impact of abuse is like life-changing and lifelong. And there's a story in it where she confronts one of the stepdads and talks about that. And this guy, she believed, was probably in his 70s. I won't spoil kind of what happens with that for the people that want to see it, but basically she walked away, and she said what she wanted to say and walked away from it. But there's a guy in his 70s. I was like thinking, it wasn't clear. They didn't disclose whether or not he'd got arrested or what happened. So, like, did he do any more? And this guy you shouldn't be able to knock on his door and be there for me, like someone that's prepared to do that. And so I was just saying to Lou, like, me and you have talked about the death penalty and stuff before, and I had very different views back in the day at PGL when we were together. I was very right wing on that, and I've kind of gone full circle. And I find it, I can kind of understand when it's an adult, especially when it's an adult. In Tim's case, it wasn't. It was a teenager, I believe, but an adult doing that for a child, especially young child. I would have no problem if someone took away their life. I feel like you can't be in society, like you can't. And if you're housing all those people, and another, I just want to add this other layer to it as well, Shawn, which was really shocking. Tim told maybe half a dozen of his closest male friends about this. He disclosed over the time, and a lot of people don't know about it. But he did tell around 12, and he said what unbelievably shocked him was that over half of the people, possibly 3/4 of them, had been abused too.
Wow.
And the lady went on to say that the numbers are like 1 in 5 reported, but because not everyone opens up to reveal that, we don't actually know true numbers. And I was just like, oh my God, like I've got 5 nephews, and you're like, one of them statistically would be. And it's like, I it brings up a really interesting point as far as kind of like punishment and how do you, I just don't know how you go about handling this. I haven't got the answers, but like, if it's like, oh, we killed him, the police are like, he was no good, he'd done it for 2-3 women, he wasn't going to change, so we just shot him in the head. I'd be like, yeah, I'd go to sleep absolutely fine that night. I can kind of understand, like, you have a lion in like or a tiger in an Indian village, and they kind of slaughter him because their kids are he's taken out 8 kids. They say kill the tiger. You're like, I kind of see it similarly to that, and I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's just like how I see it. So, okay, we're going on from COVID a little bit, but like the kind of treatment of it,
it's very interesting.
I'm interested to see what, because you are left leaning, and you're someone always give the benefit of the doubt. Where do you just put the podcast aside for a moment on listening to it and your thoughts on it, but like the treatment of that and where you go with it. I'm interested to get your thoughts.
Because I do have some experience, not personally. There was somebody close to our family who turns out was abusing children that we found out after the fact. And it's something we've had to contend with on a lesser degree, because he's still a part of the family. And it was a discussion
Can I ask how old the person was when they were doing that?
How old the person they were abusing?
So well, I mean, you can disclose that if you want, but I'm intrigued by the age of the person that's doing it.
The person is so my mother was worried that we were abused by this person, and this person I still have a relationship to this day with. I've still enjoyed his company. I will get around to how it wasn't easy to get to that point. I don't think he'll ever watch this, but if he does, he does. So I just want to be careful with what I'm saying, and just keep it very generic. So this person had traveled, and there was a history of I think sexual abuse, and he's somebody who had a very high up job, who was very intelligent, speaks a lot of languages, and his job had him traveling around the world. And it turned out it was something that they found out when he would travel. That's one of the things he did. I don't know the details, but it was something that we found out about. And there was a lot of family dynamics with that. But the person he was married to, who was close to our family, is very religious and wanted to, I don't know exactly the ins and outs. So again, I just want to be very careful, because I only see this in a very small microcosm. And I've been introduced this in a very specific way. And I've not lived in the same country as these people whilst this has been going on. But there are people that are close enough to me that it had an impact. And it's something that I had to deal with to a lesser degree. And this is going to be separate from my death penalty view, which is completely different than that. And I'll be able to succinctly give you my death penalty view, and I'll wrap up with that. But in this situation, because the person that we loved was very Christian and very, I wouldn't say forgiving, because I don't want to make it out as if it was like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, I forgive you. It wasn't like that, I'm sure. But there was a period of, in their position, I'm sure, prayer and counseling, and there was a separation period, and now the family is reunited. And this person does not have a great life from what I can see. I'm sure he's happy, but compared to what he was doing, I'm sure he's happy, but it's not the life that he had. So he's had to start over in many respects. And because this person close to us, was married to him, there was a lot of issues, because my mother said, were you ever abused? This person was babysitting, was watching. No, nothing ever happened to me. And I think this person probably only did it with people that were in other countries. There was this whole thing where, my father, I have 3 siblings, and I have a large family. I have 6 uncles and an aunt. So my father comes from a large family, and there's a lot of children. And we have a lot of teachers and educators in our family, and a lot of people. It's a very child protective family. Not that any other family isn't more or less than us, but it hit a tone with the family, and there was people that wanted to just rip him to shreds, because you're preying on vulnerable people. But then what happens is we then have to come to terms with what's happening. So the question is, does this person deserve a second chance? Is this an illness? Yes, it's inarguably an illness when people do this. This person was conciliatory and was making all the steps that they needed to make to change their life and to fix this, which if you don't have people given the opportunity to do this, regardless of how poor their behavior is, and I'm not glazing over how terrible it is and how disgusted I am by this, if you don't have, the ability for people to reconcile their way and learn a new way, there's no point in once somebody commits a crime, you may as well just stick them in jail forever. Because what's the point of rehabilitation if nobody has the opportunity to identify their problems and rehabilitate? And this is a challenging point, because you have, from our family, you've got somebody that you just want to you think about all the people that are vulnerable that this person took advantage of and probably damaged. I've actually worked with children who were sexually abused when they were babies. So I used to do work in sort of outward bound style programs. And I've seen little children who cannot speak because the emotional abuse was so bad in those situations. They're nonverbal now, or they have violent tendencies because of these behaviors. So it's very difficult for me individually to put all those thoughts and experiences aside. However, I don't know enough about the situation. I don't know the details of what's going on. The people that are very close to me who have forgiven this person to a degree, I'm sure there's always going to be some trauma there. They've accepted him back into his life, and we can't just, this person is close to us, and we can't just say to this person, you've accepted this person who is abused, in your spectrum, in your circle, you've accepted their forgiveness. This person's making all the right steps. We're going to just kick you out of the circle. I think there's an element where we feel a bit protective, it just okay, fine. We're going to have to just try to find a way to deal with this. And this person is at, events, major family events. We see them all the time. They're staying in the house. They're getting comfortable enough to be their old self, which sometimes can be a bit of an ass. And it's just such a challenging thing. And the way I deal with that right now is I just try to judge him on who he is now and just ignore who he was, because that's the only thing I know how to do. And I don't even know if that's right. People are going to judge me for this. Well, that's fine. People can judge me and tell me I'm wrong. I don't know what's right and wrong. I just know there's someone that I love very much who's very close to this person. This person is going through everything that he needs to do, understanding that it's a problem. It's an illness. It's something that's being treated for. I can only judge a person on what they're doing. And if they're following what the law says they need to do for resolving this issue, criminal issues, moral, whatever it is, they're making all the steps. And I have to, if society is to work, I have to accept that. And I have to, I kind of feel like I have to just sort of keep muscling on and just, make sure I'm aware of that. Because if I ignore, or if I treat this person like a pariah, there's two things that'll happen. One of which, there's people that are connected to this person that are family that I'm also pushing out, but also this person's got a problem. And if I don't work with them, on their road to recovery, I'm potentially pushing them back out, by ostracizing them. You're sending them back out onto that road. And those people that have that problem, it's an addiction. It's no different than being, I'm going to be very clear, very careful with what I say. It's very similar to being an alcoholic, or, it's an addictive trait that people have. So it's very complex. And we just, I will have conversations with him. I've enjoyed conversations with him, but I have to block out who he was for right now. And, for me, I have to believe in rehabilitation. Now, that's not the same as my death penalty view, because I don't begrudge the idea of wanting to kill somebody who's done horrible things. And I think there's nothing wrong with killing people in an isolated spectrum who have done things that are heinous and have no forgiveness. So Ted Bundy is a classic example. I don't know if you've seen the Ted Bundy tapes.
Yeah.
That's somebody who, he went he was very traumatized by his last moments. I don't have any problem with that. I don't have any problem that he was put to death. And I have no problem, because we know who he is. We know that that is not the wrong person. However, when you use your example, and I'm not picking on your example, but I think it's a good example of, a police officer just said, look, he's done it a few times. I'm just going to put a bullet in his head. There's an issue when you start adjudicating who can decide who's dying. And when you start looking at that police officer in that example, what training does he have to make that determination? And could he be wrong? And if we look at the death penalty in America, or anywhere else. How many people have died innocently? In my view, and I disagree with my wife on this. If one person out of 100 dies who did nothing wrong, death penalty is off the table for me, and that happens. And the people that are on death row are not rich people. They don't have the best representation. And people who are bad, who have good representation, who should be put to death probably, are not put to death because they have better representation. So until you can be 1,000,000% sure that every person who's put to death should be rightfully done so, then there's no death penalty for me. It's not even a conversation.
Yeah, that's really interesting, mate. And thank you for sharing all that, because I didn't know any of that as your friend. So
yeah,
there's a lot to kind of unpack with what you just said. And if you go back to the friend perspective, so let me just give you kind of my 2 pence as well, because I think this is a massively complicated situation. Yeah. Like not with your family. I mean, this is a massive, complicated resolution to getting through this. There is no one answer. Oh, you kill them, or you never kill them. You rehabilitate them all. I don't think it works like that. I think it's on the circumstances of what's happening. So if I just lead with a couple of examples to help my framing to kind of make this clear as well, I think that if like a 9-year-old child is doing things with a child younger than that, I think it's a very different situation to a 30-year-old fully articulated, intelligent being doing things with a child that's under the age of 10.
Yeah, like grooming.
And I think I want to make another point as well, that I've got to be careful with what I say here, because I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying what I can understand more is that if you have females in particular, because they mature faster than men, and men are more predatory than women anyway. If you have a female girl between the ages of 14 and 15, some of them can look quite mature to the age of 18. My ex-girlfriend was very mature for her age, and she did look older and was able to get into clubs and get beer and stuff. That doesn't mean that she's allowed to, or stuff should have happened. Of course not. I'm not stating that. But what I'm saying is that if there were a male in their 20s that found, a girl at 15 years old that looks attractive, and she was,
there's gray area there.
Was complicit. I think it's a different ball game. I see it's totally different. In fact, it's got to look. You've got to look on its merit, and I know that it's a grey area, and you could say, well, like you shouldn't really be talking to 14, 15-year-old girls, but there could be lies, there could be, and look, it's what she looks like. That's what I'm kind of basing it on now. Looks 18, and that's fair game, kind of in their head, perhaps. So I think that if you're looking at just a couple of examples there, things can get different. Like in Tim's case, I think he was estimating the guy was around 12 to 14, and he was 2 to 4.
Yeah, I
think it's a different circumstance to what the female went through as a grown man, and she was 9 when it started, and it went on for 3 years. I mean, I think everyone has to be looked at differently. I think we don't need to go into what happened with your friend and the details on that, but I think if it's a case that your point in which there needs to be the opportunity to atone for what they've done, I think is totally valid. And I think that's where, as a society, we fall short in general, across the board in multiple areas. There's this, you fucked up, that's it, you're dead to me. Get off the screen, cancel culture type of thing. And I hate that. There needs to be a way out for people to apologize. I made a mistake here. Let me kind of come round from it. That's like a starting place. That's a starting place. Okay. I think depending on the circumstances of the individual's age, intelligence, and then the same thing, the age and intelligence of the person that's doing, and then the potential of that being repeated is when we can kind of go into how things may differ. You also made the point about the illness as well. Now, I'm uneducated, unknowledgeable. So this is just me off the top of my head, whatever the fuck that I know. I imagine there'd be people out there that have certain impulses that they feel that they can't control and need to act upon, and will do things because there's a feel of needing to. In some cases where they want to or not, they just feel like they've got to. And I also believe there are people that use those type of people as scapegoats for their behavior, which they can control, and they are in, and they're just, it's just a disease. And I believe there are people there that can't help it. And I believe there are people that can help it that ignore it. And it's the difficulty. This is where it gets so difficult, because those people we've got to, we have to root out all of them, obviously, but I think got to be really careful with those ones that, well, actually, no, I think those people that, if they're doing it multiple times, I mean, they just got to be taken off the streets. And if you're trying to go through rehabilitation and it isn't working and they cannot help themselves, they just have to be housed forever. But my point about the bullet in the head wasn't actually a cop. Maybe I explained it. I wasn't meaning cop make the call, because your point's spot on. Like, you don't know all of that stuff. You haven't done all the investigation, perhaps. You don't know all the ins and outs, maybe. So they should be given fair trial. But if at the end of that, look, as an example, you're a 60-year-old, we found that you've done like 24 people, all of this proof coming through, this evidence backing up, we're going to take, and he actually is like, yeah, I did it. Like, the evidence is there, and he's not, and he's like, and so what? Like, see you later. Like, I won't lose any sleep off that. But
I think when we look at those extremes, and I think if you were to say, historically, and this kind of doubles back to my view on the death penalty, and the person I know is a good example of somebody who's been terribly underpunished in almost, well, in everybody's eyes. But when you look at the example of let's say what's not a gray area, then you start to ask questions. So what if this person who is unrepentant, let's say, has done something terrible to 24 people? What if that person was abused as a child and they learn these behaviors growing up? And is that something where you just say, tough luck, kid, we're gonna execute you at that stage? I think that's what incarceration is for. I saw an interview. This it was, I forget what it was, Profiles of a Murder or something. It was on one of the investigation shows, and it was a serial killer who was being interviewed, and he didn't get the death penalty. He's on death row, but he's like, look, if I'm out, I don't know that I can stop this urge. And he was somebody who his father had shown him how to shoot at a young age, and his father would execute animals with his son watching, even executed the kid's dog with him watching, and wiped his blood on his face after he shot him. And he is almost like, how do you make a serial killer? Now, this guy is a terrible person. He did some awful things. I'm not going to go into detail, but he knew he shouldn't be out in the real world. And actually, he's probably, he is the person who's done the things that are bad. He's a good candidate for the death penalty. But you then, I think at that stage, do you just discount what's happened early in life? He was built to be this way. So how do you deal with that? And I don't know that that's an easy answer to say for me. And I might get shit for saying this, but he should be locked away, and he very well should be, put to death. But at the same time, he didn't make himself to be this way. And there was opportunities. If this kid had different, upbringing, would he not be a serial killer? Now, the one thing the interviewer said was this kid also had 4 siblings who were raised in the same environment, and they were groomed in the same way, and they didn't, have those tendencies. But I think when you're talking about the finality of death, I think there's so many ifs, ands, or buts out there that, you can make something productive out of somebody by locking them away for life and having them, make shoes for homeless people. I don't know, whatever the fuck it is. Just for me, I don't even entertain the thought of that gratifying, let's murder somebody who's done something terrible, because there's just so much question mark on how do you, equitably and correctly adjudicate that in a modern society. I don't think it's possible. So that's an easy way out for me. That's my easy way to get out of this question.
It's fucking complicated, mate. It is complicated. I think it's only getting around that. It was just, it brings up a lot of interesting points. And for the point of the podcast, I'm happy to kind of sidestep this from here, because I think it's just something you could probably talk about for days and not get anywhere.
God, yeah.
But the podcast in itself was, my 2 main points are that it's a fascinating listen. If that, I still find it fascinating just hearing someone open up. It's massively brave of him doing it as well.
Yeah.
And I also just feel like I wanted to put it out there as if someone knows someone type thing. If someone knows someone that's gone through it, again, he kind of just says that his kind of leading point was he actually planned out to kill himself at one stage. Tim Ferriss, and had everything planned. And he has reached real lows in this situation, and there is always hope. That was the point, that people, you're not alone. There are people out there that have been through what you've been through, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you can get through it. And he's got all these different tools and websites and things to go to. So just to kind of put it out there, that if anyone knows anyone that's gone through this, then that would be a fantastic place to start and listen. And for the curious among you that maybe would be interested in hearing someone kind of tackle something like that, and hearing what they've done to get around it. And I just thought it was a fascinating listen. So I thought I'd share that with you.
I think it's an incredible thing, because I think if you take our comments, or even some of my comments in sort of a microcosm, it sounds like, to a degree, I'm not being as supportive of people that have been in a bad situation, which is as far from the truth as possible. And I think what Tim Ferriss is doing is an example of the best possible way forward, because a lot of times, I'm not an expert, but a lot of times with these serial offenders, people that do these just heinous things that I can't comprehend, it's the fact that that people don't come out, and they don't feel they can come out, and they don't feel they have those avenues, and they don't have that outlet where they can hear other people's stories, because that's empowering. I think with this Me Too movement, it was just hearing other people come forward with their stories and think, I'm not alone, I'm not weird, or I'm not, it's I should come out and I should say something. And I think that's going to save more people than killing somebody who's done something previously. Not that there isn't value in that. There could very well be value in it. And if it was equitable, I'd say 100%. But I think the focus is on making people feel like they can come out. Not punishment is one thing, and it's gratifying, but it's about addressing the issue and trying to prevent it from happening to anyone else. That's where, for me, the resource should be.
I just want to make 3 points. Sorry to cut you off there, mate, because I'm afraid I'll forget them. 3 points to that. Number one, he knows who he is. He knows where he lives. His parents know. And he said that if on the off chance he's listening here, I'm not going to be going forward with his name or reporting it. It was just like, but don't worry. There's enough. He has told a handful of people, enough people know that if because Tim didn't even know he was going to release this. And he keeps saying, if I release this podcast, except. But he said, so if I don't release this podcast and anything happens to me, there are enough people that know who he is and that could follow through and do that. So Tim decided, it took a brave decision as well, not to put it forward, because he's worried about vigilante justice. And that if he came out and named this person, maybe the location of him, something could happen to him, and he didn't want that on his hands. And he was just, I thought that again, like, what a massive decision. Like that's huge. Secondly, the point that you said about people not being able to, talk about this, that the lady who interviewed him did an amazing job. Her stepdad said, if you tell anyone about this, I'm going to kill your mum, and I'm going to kill your, I think it was brother or sister. So if you tell anyone, I'm going to kill your loved ones. So as a young girl, she was just like, oh God, obviously petrified of this big man anyway. And that she could imagine him killing people. So she was, just so fearful of doing anything as a result. So how many other people have been through something similar and are scared of that, and they kind of cling on to that? The third, what was the third point? Ah, shit. I had another one I wanted to say.
I talked a bit too much.
Huh?
I should have stopped sooner.
No, there's, was it about, I can't remember, but
so I was just referencing in that point that, people need a place to go. I think I highlighted that the death penalty has.
Sorry, I found it.
Yeah.
Should I cut in?
Yeah, please go. Yeah.
Sorry, Shawn. So the thing was, so this has been on his mind for years to do this, but he's been too scared. And weirdly, if people are really interested in Tim Ferriss, as like myself, Tim Ferriss actually opened up to this via psychedelics. He's been experimenting with it for a long time and supports the legal use of it and the scientific use of it. He went on he had a psychedelic experience, and it came out during that. It's like, fuck, that happened to me. and that realized it, and then he knew who it was, where it was, what happened. He knew everything. It all came flooding back because he just shut it all down as a kid. That was the way he handled it at that age. And when he actually admitted to someone that this had happened, he was fasting and then went on a 10-day retreat. And this all kind of like came out in the wash, and he was just like, I don't think I could like handle it. When he came out of that, when that breakdown that he had, the nigh on breakdown, when he kind of realized and spoke to someone about it, he went on the Jocko podcast almost straight after. And you see Tim Ferriss off the back of that. He was strange. He was getting interviewed by Jocko, and it's like, Jocko's like, hey dude, what are you doing? You're fasting for like 10 days and going on a silent retreat. Are you mental? And this is Jocko, this like super hard seal. He's like, that is like, that's mind numbing kind of stuff that you did. And Tim was in a different place. And he had just come off the back of basically admitting what had happened. And that was, so for those people that I'll probably be speaking to like one person in a million that have like followed him like me, that have seen that, but that was quite intriguing. The point I wanted to make was this. He has been battling whether or not to admit this for so many reasons he's been scared of. And he decided to write a book about it. And his girlfriend intelligently said that it may take you 3 years to write this book the way you want to write it. If you were to talk about it, it could be out, say, in a few days. And think about the amount of lives, the people that you could help in those 3 years, people that will commit suicide because they can't handle going through that. And so he decided to record it, and then after that decide whether or not to release it or not, and he's put it forward. So that was the point, because you mentioned all those points as like, oh, there's something on that, there's something on that, Shawn, there's something on that. So that was just off the back of trying to help people. He's kind of bravely recorded it and put it out now, and he is going to write a book, but this is out there to kind of help people and give people hope in this meantime, which I thought was fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure that link is front and center. I'm going to put it on the screen. I'm going to make sure that people know where to find that, because for me, I think that's where sometimes, and this may be a good point to start wrapping up on, because we could go on for absolutely hours talking about this. Is I think when we look at criminal justice, we look at how people are dealing with crime and trauma. We spend so much time focusing on punishment. We don't spend enough time focusing on treating the issues and giving people a place that they feel like they can go and they can speak, making it to where people that offend or do these sort of things almost feel as if it's too much of a risk to even, entertain those feelings, because people feel so open and welcome to report when they feel that they've been wronged. And I think that like, for me, I'm going to definitely watch that podcast. I just think it's so brave to, make yourself that zero
Absolutely.
candidate, that example, to just come out and say, this has happened to me, and I want to share my story so that people that are in the same position aren't staying quiet about it, because it's not going to help. People need to come out, and it's not. And when I say people need to come out, I'm not zeroing in on anybody who's not coming out saying, why haven't you? It's, I think I just have to be very careful with what I'm saying here, because I don't understand the content.
Can I back you up on this? Because the lady made a very valid point on this, that most people hide from it and they want to bury it. And that basically she's saying that she's never encountered anyone that's able to outrun it. You'll never outrun it. And that basically the suffering is within you. It affects you physically and psychologically, not just psychologically, but physically. It is within you forever. And the way that you can start to heal yourself and overcome it is by admitting it and getting it, taking the steps of recovery and to work with it. And Tim's point was that I think he had a line from Jordan Peterson, which was ace. And it was not that we should try to avoid suffering in life in general, but what we need to do is become accustomed to suffering. So get accustomed to suffering to the level that you're not worried about suffering. Yeah. And this lady kind of backed up and saying that the fear of suffering, the fear of coming out and what the impact would be, is far more detrimental to your health than what actually the reality of coming forward and opening up was. So those were a couple of really key points at the end that he wanted to say, that it's been a great thing for him to do. And he doesn't believe in forgive. In this case, he's like, I don't forgive. I don't believe there. But what I'm doing is letting go of the anger. I'm letting go of the hatred. I'm letting go of that, and that is enough. And that is enough to go down. And he said, I don't think I could ever get to that point where I forgive and we're going to just move on from this. But I think I can, I'm at the stage where I could let go of and move on with my life, and maybe actually use this as a tool. Again, he was saying there's a book about the gift of something, the gift of suffering or something. And he said, I wouldn't say this is a gift, but I'm trying to use this as an opportunity to help and connect with people. And he's now got a greater sense of well-being and purpose in life, that actually he could maybe stop people, taking their lives or ultimately suffering. So he's going to try and push forward and help people with that. And I thought, for those people that follow him, it'll be very interesting to see what he does off the back of this. I thought it was inspiring. It was amazing to see someone front that. There are loads of learnings that I took from it, from someone that's been hugely fortunate not ever to go through that. But recommended.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure that we reference that in this video. So have a look in the description. There will be a link to this podcast. I will be listening to it. And I think it's really, I'm really glad you brought that up. Because I think for anybody who's watching this, I think the more ears you can get on, or learn that there's resources or people out there that you can listen to quietly, and maybe, the nice thing about this video for me, or this podcast, is if somebody's suffering with this, they can, quietly say, no, maybe I'll give it a listen. And you don't have to necessarily acknowledge it out loud to people. You're not reporting anybody doing anything. You can still, it's giving you that it's that first step. And if that, I mean, it's something that, I can't, it's kind of an emotional thing. It's really hard to think about and to talk about, and just absolutely grateful that there's people out there like that are willing to put themselves on the firing line to just help somebody else out. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's why I want to share it. Like, I felt I was listening to it and I was like, I've got to listen to this. I think it's going to be difficult, but I'm going to. And I'm really glad that I did. And I feel better equipped and a little bit more knowledgeable about the impact that it has and everything else. And just as a kind of a human study listen, it was an intriguing podcast. So and look, thanks again, mate, for sharing your kind of insight into that. You have more real life experience than me of that. That it sounded like it wasn't easy to do that. So, but I think you did a good job of it.
And again, I just want to throw this preface out. If ever our podcast gets big enough and somebody's going to clip the wrong things out of this, I just want to throw out there that I don't support anybody who does anything bad. And I'm not, I think when I look at these views and I look at things from all sides, it's just on the greater good scale. And it's, I think I really believe we spend so much time worrying about what the punitive measures are. We don't focus enough time on the corrective measures. And for me, I very much believe that I don't focus on the death penalty because it's not, for me, statistically
doesn't fix the problem. Yeah,
there's enough data out there that it's, you can almost say that it's a fact. I mean, you can't with just data, but for me, people like Tim Ferriss doing these type of things and letting people know that, even for me, if somebody came to me and told me about this, man, I'd want to do anything I can on their own time scale to help them out. It's not as if Nick were to come to me, I'd say, okay, we're going to go speak to the guy. You're coming with me. Or we're going to take you into a site. No, that's not how it works. And I think it's giving people avenues to learn how to, to talk about it, or just to at least have that conversation in your head. So I will definitely be listening to it. And Huw, I can't be more grateful for you to bring that up.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, no, I did. I felt like it's the very least I could do is talk about, because of what those guys have gone through and what they shared. And I thought there was just immense value in that, just to kind of, again, be someone to pass that out to someone else and someone else. So I think it's really helpful. So no, you're very welcome.
Well, mate, I think that might be a good cue to wrap up this week's one. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, me too.
So just to switch gears here, well, not switch gears, just to wrap up, I'm going to be putting some links in the description on the minutes and what we've talked about. So again, just have a look at, if you want to skip ahead to the area that you want to. I don't even know why I'm saying this, because by the time somebody's seen this, they've already seen the episode. So what I'll do is I will timestamp where we talked about things if you do want to revisit it. And I'm just going to keep this recording in its entirety. So what we will be doing is we'll be releasing our review of Miami Vice on Friday. So please make sure you like and subscribe and tune in on Friday. And next Wednesday will be our pre-after show, which I think is what we'll call it.
Yeah.
After we review the Dukes of Hazzard. If you do happen to know a Dukes of Hazzard episode that's your favorite, that you think is a good example of the show, please let us know. You can tweet us. You can let me put the socials up there.
I was going to say, where would they notify us, Shawn?
Twitter, Periscope, Bearded Philosophy 1, Facebook, Bearded Philosophy, and I'm thinking about getting an Instagram page started. So at Bearded
I think we just got to keep that going forever. You got to keep that coming soon.
Well, the page is there. It is there. I just don't know how to take pictures of what we do. Yes.
I'm going to be slightly disappointed the day that you do. Put it that way.
You know what? I've set it up now where I think it's a thing right now. So right now I'm still thinking about it. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. You know, I might. I'll get there. We'll post something someday.
Keep thinking.
Yeah. So Dukes of Hazzard next week. Hugo, have a good week, and I will catch up with you next week.
You too, mate. Take care. Thanks again, everyone.
Take care.